Unfortunately, though, bad news for the Mavericks today, as it appears that Maxi Kleber's season has come to an end. He today had surgery on his torn right hamstring. Mavericks announcing today that forward Maxi Kleber underwent surgery to address a right hamstring tear. Kleber will begin rehabilitation immediately, and there is no timetable for his return at this point. It looks like his season, though, effectively is over for the Dallas Mavericks, which is a big blow for them, especially in their front court. And we've seen how that front court has been ravaged with injury and DNPs when it comes to JaVale McGee.
All right,
so
you just
far
don't
this
keep
year.
singling out JaVale McGee.
Well, I mean, he is the one on a multi-year deal that can't get on the floor, apparently, in regular minutes. That's another conversation for another day, or maybe this one, because it all leads to what could be what is a lost season. Now, as we have this conversation, it's very hard for me to get here to this point, but let's just kind of take a look at where the Dallas Mavericks are, right?
Okay.
This team right now is 15 and 15.
15 and 16.
Or excuse me, 15 and 16.
Half a game below 500.
Below 500.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, during this time, this Mavericks team was 16 and 18 as the calendar get ready to turn from December to January.
Oh, okay, so they're in a similar place. That means they're going to have the same season as last year, right, KG?
Not so much.
Okay.
I mean, last year they won, 31, 32 games to end their regular season last year. Found their way, obviously, into the top 6 of the Western Conference. But this year's team does not give me that same feel.
Well, yes, I think something that you did not elaborate on there was this time last year, Kristaps Porzingis was a Dallas Maverick. Right? Like,
Very
you
true.
were still playing that kind of two different styles of basketball, and then you reached the trade deadline or around the trade deadline, and you made that trade that switched up the entire way that you played, that really streamlined this team around Luka Doncic, and then that accelerated the capabilities of your team and like the way that you play basketball. And that really led to, well, not entirely led, because you had started finding your way offensively around the turn of the calendar, but then that really propelled you forward in a big way to, you know, help you win and then go and win in the playoffs in the postseason as well.
And I'm sorry, they went 36 and 12 in their final 48 games after starting 16 and 18 last year, did the Mavericks.
There you go. I don't see what the big change is that's coming, and I guess maybe that's part of it is I don't got no crystal ball. I'm not supposed to see a big change coming maybe. But yeah, I don't know what the big change would be that helps you in this year become, you know, in a similar fashion to what you did last year that would get you into that place.
So when you look at this team now, losing its backup, you know, center / power forward, and arguably its most versatile defender on this team in Maxi Kleber, the up and down nature in which this offense and defense have played at times. I saw an interesting stat today where apparently the Mavericks are 1-9 this year when Christian Wood plays at least 28 minutes in a ball game.
It's probably not good.
And it just made me laugh because like, well, y'all wanted more.
I also wonder how much that is like confirmation bias or what. I don't know if that's the
it's
right
an
term.
easy stat to cherry pick
because I think the instances where he's played those minutes is because he's had to, because you were lacking other players, or because Luka wasn't playing.
And last night was the first time that Christian Wood has started a game alongside Luka Doncic. And you've acquired Kemba Walker. You've tried to see different, you know, lineup combinations. But here's the thing that we always talk about when it comes to the NBA. Either you're really good or you're really bad. Sitting in the middle in the NBA isn't always necessarily the greatest thing to do, at least in my mind.
For me, I feel like if you sit in the middle for an extended amount of time, I would add that caveat, because there's nothing wrong with being in the middle for a year, for a couple of seasons, like existing in that point and being a fun team to watch. Add that caveat as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, to being okay as a means to getting to an end. It is when you find yourself positioned there permanently where this is your way station.
Yes.
And you were consistently in that. Like, there was a time period in the early aughts to like teens or whatever, where the Utah Jazz were the name of mediocrity and middling in, the league. They would constantly be around that 5th seed, something like that, consistently, time after time after time. And that is not what you want to be. However, I think it's okay to be there for a year or two, provided that you are just like, look, man, this is where we got to be. We are in a holding pattern until we reach the next thing.
And it's funny you brought up, those years too. It made me think about a team like the Clippers, for example. Remember the Lob City years? You had Blake Griffin and Chris Paul.
I wouldn't even call that a middling team. I wouldn't call it that.
My point is they had ascended to a certain point, but then they had to make a decision. Okay, well, we keep getting to this point. We keep getting to past the first round. We get to the Western Conference, semifinals. Like we get to a certain point, but we can't get past where we believe our ceiling should be for this team in this iteration of the Clippers. And they eventually had to make a decision to, in essence, start over and try to figure it out. The Mavericks aren't anywhere near that point just yet. We've talked about, what Tim McMahon has suggested, that this is a 2-year window right now for the Mavericks to demonstrate that they can compete, with what they have. But here's what concerns me, though.
Okay, what concerns you?
That I think this team reached its peak as it is currently constructed last year when they reached the Western Conference Finals. I think the way that Reggie Bullock, Dorian Finney-Smith, obviously the departed now Jalen Brunson, what they were and what they played to last year at their level, to me, was the peak and the apex of what they are as currently constructed. And I don't know if that same team can make it back to that point in the Western Conference Finals this year or next year without some major changes. Because I think you got the most out of what each of those players' capabilities were when we saw them make their run last year in the Western Conference Finals.
So, okay, I understand what you're saying. I think that in that instance, you would need to try and make a change in the direction that you're going. And maybe this is ultimately where you were trying to get to. But you have assets that don't really provide you an opportunity to make that change directly, right? It doesn't allow you to do that very quickly and continue towards that goal. It's going to have to be maybe like a half step back or something like that. And will you allow me to jump backwards this way? Because
yeah, sure.
I was doing a very bad tease in some ways when we were talking about Zach LaVine and the Chicago Bulls. And if the Bulls are actually in a place where they want to get rid of Zach LaVine, I think that he currently makes a good amount of money. I think that he makes something like $27 million. I have to double check this. And if you could help me out, Ruben, I'd greatly appreciate that. He makes a good amount of money, and he's the caliber of player as like a kind of,
he's making $37 million.
37. Thank you. He's an all-star player, and he's been to, like, I wouldn't call him a perennial all-star just yet, but he's right around that place. And when you got like a defensive player of the year in Rudy Gobert that changed teams, that commanded a 4 first-round pick haul, plus some swaps and some players. I think that now you're in a place where a swap for Zach LaVine, I don't know about like pick swaps or whatever, but you're definitely probably going to need 2 first-round picks and players.
Well, here's the thing, and it's funny you were bringing that up because Bobby Marks has all 30 NBA teams, their draft capital, and some of the things that they have asset-wise. So the Mavericks, of course, owe the New York Knicks a top 10 protected pick in 2023, 24, or 25.
Yeah, depending on if it's conferred with the protections. Yeah.
The earliest they can trade is 2 years after the Knicks pick is conveyed. So if they go ahead and, owe that pick going into 2023.
Yeah, you can take off the protections and say, look, y'all just going to get this pick no matter what. Then you can go ahead and definitively trade your 25 and 27 first-round picks.
Yep.
So you could do that, maybe do some pick swaps. I don't know how much you'd want to do that. And this is the tough part. In order to make the money work, I think Spencer Dinwiddie would have to go. I don't know if this actually works in the ESPN trade machine because Zach LaVine is not eligible to be traded until January 15th. Would not allow me to try this. So thanks a lot, ESPN. Thanks for nothing. I wonder if, considering that you're getting Zach LaVine for 4 years and you're giving up Spencer Dinwiddie for 2 years, I wonder if you could also, if you would be willing to tack on Christian Wood, who, look, he is a free agent after the season. I don't know how this team feels about him.
He's making $14.3 million this year.
I do wonder if the $20 million plus the $20 million of Spencer Dinwiddie's contract plus the 14 of Christian Wood would be able to match those salaries. And then you bring back who is somebody who I think you would definitely say is a number 2 player. He is another guard, which is tough. But is that a place where you step back enough in this season on what could, as you mentioned, be a lost year, but then give yourself the foundation to then try and play for something great.
I mean, that money works at Spencer Dinwiddie at a little over $20 million. As I mentioned, Christian Wood making 14, so they get you at 34. Then you throw in, Ntilikina or Pinson to, get it to that full 37. I mean, the money does work there.
But then also, do the Bulls actually want to trade Zach LaVine?
Which I don't believe that they do.
Do they want Dinwiddie and Christian Wood?
I mean, Dinwiddie, yeah, you would probably want to take. Because, he's proven now to be a good catch and shoot.
Because it also has to work for them. As a team, they are in that place where like, dang, this didn't work. And if they do trade Zach LaVine, let's say that they keep everything else that they have. They would have DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and Spencer Dinwiddie, and Christian Wood.
And Lonzo Ball still there.
Is that a team that wins you the East? Because that's ultimately where they were trying, or like get you in a good place in the East? I don't know.
No, I don't
and so,
think
like,
so.
Would they be retooling in this way and kind of being in the same place? And that's the tough thing about it when it comes down to a trade. And, of course, this is not the only trade. This is just one that came to mind because of the rumors with Zach LaVine. But, I don't know. I was just thinking about that. And it reminded me of the ways in which the Mavs are somewhat stuck because the high-level player that they want, I don't know that they have the things that are appealing enough to make those happen without just trading all your future first.
And plus, the Mavericks right now are $16.5 million over the luxury tax. So the future of Christian Wood will determine whether or not this team is in luxury tax next year, which is why it was so wild. I know how all the things obviously, went down contextually with Jalen Brunson, but you could retain him and still be over the luxury tax because you had his bird rights or had his, contractual rights to be able to still go over.
No, the bird rights.
Yeah, the bird rights to be able to go over, the luxury tax and still keep him, which is why.
Yeah, I understand the NBA mechanics can be a little confusing if you aren't like fully familiar. Trust us, like you would have been able to go over the salary cap and
still keep Jalen Brunson. So, like I said, I don't think it's a lost season yet because, the latest evidence that we had for them a year ago, as I mentioned, they went 36-12 in their final 48 games and was able to be a top, 4 or 5 team in the Western Conference.
The tough thing about it is, like, this is a team that is built to, like, they are capable of being a nuisance in the postseason, but that's when they're best case scenario. And I think we're finding out the best case scenario is not something you can bank on with this group of Mavericks.
And one last thing, well, two things actually. You mentioned the luxury tax. Is Mark Cuban willing to pay for it? A luxury tax?
Well, if you let him tell it, he is.
And was willing to do it, this past summer to keep, Jalen Brunson after already having, Luka going into his max.
Yeah, but some people say, don't tell me, show me. And
which he has been unwilling to do for over the past decade now.
I know we have gone pretty long, but one more thing here from the 214. I would implement Kemba in a legit role for the time being. How you feel about that, KG?
His knee is busted. How long you gonna wait before that thing explodes again? Like you've got to. That
was real aggressive the way you said that.
Yeah.
Well, you got to wait. You have to pace Walker at this point in his career. He's not a guy that can get out here 5, 6, 7 games at a time and play 30 minutes at a time. That's not where he is right now. And if you try that, that's a ticking time bomb in that leg of his. So I would not necessarily. He was good against Cleveland, that's for sure. But yeah, his knee scares me to death at this point.